Nice.
We're
First
here with
take.
Verse Take episode 2.
That's
Ready to
right.
rock, ready to roll.
Deuce deuce.
Throwing up deuces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My name's
Yep.
James Bigby.
Yep. Justin Kane.
I'm
That's the
from
name.
I'm from a small town in South Carolina,
Oh, okay. All right.
but I'm here in the big city to talk
Yeah.
poetry.
Mm. I
You
didn't know we
know,
were gonna get so intimate there. I'm from a
well,
little place in Ohio. I don't wanna bore you with the details, but
in today's episode, we were focusing on Sylvia Plath. Sylvia
mm-hmm,
Plath, a great
mm-hmm,
poet.
mm.
As usual, Justin chose one poem. I chose
Yep.
a poem. We're gonna
Yeah.
analyze them, talk about
Mm-hmm.
them,
Mm-hmm.
give you some different perspectives, and kind
Yep.
of
Yep.
even kind of see where it takes us. We're not gonna be as strict as maybe some people are when it comes to
Mm.
the poetry analysis, because we're also just having fun. This is what we would
Right.
be
Right.
doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
what we'd be doing no matter what.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Right. We're
So we
not.
felt.
Listen. We're not putting on airs. This isn't just
So we
Yeah.
thought we'd welcome you guys in
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
to talk a
Yeah.
little poetry.
Right. Right. Well, Sylvia Plath. I
Wow.
mean, long history of Sylvia Plath. I
Sylvia Plath was one of the first poets that made me feel kind of like cool for reading her. I'll be honest.
okay, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
When I was in high school, I was just like, and you gotta remember, I was in high school in like the back half of the
Mhm,
2000s,
mhm,
and
mhm.
it just seemed like she just seemed kind of cool, kind of edgy a little bit, and then plus
Yeah, yeah.
it was, and it was kind of for some reason like teenage me thought that people that killed themselves were like cool, like man,
Mm, definitely,
she killed herself, so
definitely, definitely.
so so
Don't know
I
why,
just
but yep,
yeah,
yep.
I don't know, but so yeah,
Right.
she's cool. Like I like Sylvia Plath. I've always liked her poetry.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny how like we were, me being, growing up at a similar time. How we kind of had the back, she's, writing in the, what she died in 63. So like,
Mm,
living through like the 50s, probably mostly writing 40s, 50s, into
mm-hmm.
the early 60s. And I mean, just 20 years too soon, for the goth
Mm,
punk scene.
yeah,
But
right,
us
right.
coming at the back half of the goth punk scene, I mean, Sylvia Plath seemed pretty, I don't
On
want
brand.
to. Right. Yeah. 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 I mean, you,
Sylvia Plath. You mentioned goth punk, so we
hmm
have this
hmm
emotive music, but
Yep.
but Sylvia Plath. She's also sort of been, maybe you can call it, pigeonholed as a housewife, and
Mm.
you know
Yeah.
we
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
so what we have with Sylvia Plath, we almost have like the dark side of suburbia.
hmm
You
hmm
know.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think of, and gosh, I should have names ready if I'm going to bring up references, but the housewife in Mad Men, like that
Mm,
first like season or two where, she's at home and, you start to see that there's that, there's this, she's unsatisfied
right.
to say the very least, this sort of you know empty feeling. Sylvia
Right.
Plath puts a really uh,
She hits that the
I
nail on the
mean,
head.
right, yeah, she paints only in black, like she doesn't have many colors in her paintbrush in her toolbox,
Mm.
yeah.
And speaking about Sylvia Plath being a bit ahead of her time, there's also the there's this, people talk about how like a lot of, the housewives from back in the day, even a lot of women in our day and age are,
Mm,
medicated on pharmaceuticals, maybe
mm,
overly medicated. Sylvia
mm-hmm.
Plath, she often writes about the medicine
Yes,
she was on,
yes, 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 yes.
and the different pharmaceuticals she would take, and so
Right, yeah. I mean, yeah, in some ways you could say, I mean, she's like what are they called? SRI or SSRIs? What are those called?
yeah, yeah,
The
SSRIs,
right,
mood
yeah,
medicine.
stabilizers,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
she's like early, you
Right.
know,
Early
she's
adopter.
right, yeah, yeah. And I mean, hi- also highly educated, at the time,
Right,
as was her
right, right,
husband, as was her father, I believe, as
right. Yeah,
well. Am
I
I,
think both
if
of her
I'm, or her
parents.
parent? Okay,
I might be mistaken, but I
I
know
know.
at
I
least
was
her
trying to think.
father
Was
was
her
somewhat of
dad
an
was
academic.
okay? Okay. So I mean, academic background. I mean, cutting edge,
Right.
cutting edge. Um, so it's kind of funny. You have this like really moody. Who someone who should otherwise. You would think she's got the world in the palm of her hand,
Right.
outside looking in.
Educated husband,
Hmm.
a poet, a writer
Hmm.
herself.
Hmm. Hmm. Right.
Married in a time where
Hmm.
marriage was stressed extremely. She had the nuclear family thing going
Hmm.
on, and
Hmm.
in the suburb, but it's
Two
almost like,
kids.
yeah, two kids. I think she had two kids,
Hmm. Hmm.
so it's almost like this. We almost have this Stepford Wives situation, sort of.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's kind of also reminds me of the song "Little Boxes." Little
Yeah.
boxes made of
Hmm.
ticky
Hmm.
tacky.
Yep.
Sylvia
Yep.
Plath, she refused to fit in.
Hmm. Hmm.
She
Hmm.
was one. She was one who would almost rather scream or throw herself in front of a train before
Right. Right. Yeah.
before
Ye-
succumbing to her boredom.
Right. She was an untamed stallion in many regards.
Right.
Yeah.
We spoke about ways Sylvia Plath was ahead of her time, from the pharmaceuticals to the sentiments of her work, but
Hmm.
also, the whole, the whole. Now we have not only goth punk, but we sort of have this creepy Tim Burton
Hmm.
sort of
Hmm. Yes.
aesthetic.
Hmm.
That
Yep.
Sylvia
Right.
Plath was almost Tim
Yes.
Burton before Tim Burton.
Correct. Yep.
I mean, Sylvia
Hmm.
Plath
Hmm.
almost is Sally
Hmm.
from Nightmare Before
Hmm.
Christmas. The
Yes.
way
Yeah.
Sally's like sewn together,
Yes.
yearning for Jack.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
It's almost
Right.
like a complete archetype for Sylvia Plath, and
100%.
I hate to pigeonhole her again.
Hmm.
A woman who has spent her life kicking, but
Hmm. Hmm.
she's almost become somewhat of an archetype. You know,
Hmm. Yes.
this is almost Wednesday Adams.
Hmm.
This is Sally. This is
Right.
Sally
Right.
from A Nightmare Before Christmas. This is all those emo girls
Hmm.
at the mall.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
mother. This is what who
That's
they
mother is exactly. Yeah. Yes. I thought about that. I was gonna make a joke. I was gonna try and fit it in there where I was like, I've had many run-ins with the daughters of Sylvia Plath,
right,
over the
right,
years. I'm very
right,
familiar. Um, yes, yeah,
right,
that she is the mother of kind of that whole archetype, which is
right.
kind of like Robert Frost we were talking about the last episode. It's interesting how, someone who's on the outside looking in their lifetime
Mm,
becomes, um, the inside, uh, postmortem,
oh yeah.
is seen as, I mean, now that, she'd almost be like, gosh, what would you say? You'd say,
I said archetype a few seconds
archetype,
ago.
yeah, yeah. I mean, archetype, yeah, absolutely. Like hegemonic, sort
Right.
of like, um, and
Like
just,
it's almost like if you see like a young girl in a movie reading The Belgian,
mm-hmm,
you know what I mean? It almost
mm-hmm.
says that, okay, she's gonna be she's gonna be maybe like the one that's overly emotive or sort of carrying on,
Smart,
or
serious,
yes, more, yes,
right? Yes, sort
right,
of a hidden dark side, perhaps,
right,
right?
right.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, in many ways, you'd say, just like we were talking about, Sylvia Plath could be seen as a, one who's, privileged, kind of going back
Mm,
to our, being educated, kind of coming from a sort of higher class. Um, a lot of people, sad people at the time weren't, on those medications,
right.
didn't have the voice to, didn't have the ability to voice what they were experiencing or feeling,
right.
and uh,
Or even the luxury of time to
hmm
reflect on
mm,
themselves, to
hmm
almost
hmm
ruminate on themselves.
hmm yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because I mean, we're thinking, again, we're in World War II, post World War II, period.
hmm
Not quite. Sylvia Plath is almost like, that's why Sylvia Plath, to me, she's almost like the pay, like, like almost like the Our Lady of the suburbs, if you will, Sylvia,
yes, yeah, 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 that's
because
good.
this is before the civil rights. She died before the civil rights movement
Yep.
was really kind of getting underway and everything. So she kind of lived in this sort of isolated upper echelon suburbia.
If you think about it, I mean, it's incredible because I mean, she's only 30.
Right.
I think she was technically 30 when she passed, and man, who knows? If she had another 10 years,
Right.
um,
Who knows if Sylvia
they
Plath would have
kind of
saw some third wave feminism.
right. Because I mean, because her selected poems later on in was it the 80s? I have to look it up. Won the Pulitzer. Her selected
Mm,
poems, that her husband he edited and actually did a introduction for, which is that's kind of interesting,
mm,
and but that won the Pulitzer, when that came out. So I mean, who knows what kind of influence she would have had? She had only published the one book, of
right.
poems, before her death. So, um, yeah, I'm not saying she should have held out. I'm just saying, who who
We
knows
can
what would have.
speculate.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Who
The
knows what she
voice,
would have.
the voice, the influence she could have had potentially through those times.
Right. Especially times when, like, people were centering female voices, or
Mm,
like a
mm,
time, like a time like
right.
the '80s, where there
Hmm.
did develop a taste for that sort of, like a more mainstream taste for that
Yeah, I
type of
mean,
aesthetic.
yeah. Do you imagine she's like in her 60s in the 90s? You have like this third
Mm,
world feminism coming through, and she's like this old, grizzled
right.
feminist, just like, she's
But
been through it all. She's seen it all.
and then, like, because in the '90s we had the whole Nightmare Before Christmas thing, and even, like, even like, grunge music. How
Yeah,
age?
yeah.
How does a aging Sylvia Plath react to the grunge movement?
Who knows? Yeah, right. Or who
Is it
knows?
just
Maybe if she had, maybe if she developed her, voice like poetically through the years, maybe we would have been introduced to a more mature Sylvia Plath later on, and
mm,
maybe she doesn't even embody that sad girl, Wednesday Adams, sort of character that we see her as now, because we didn't get
right?
to see her come out on the other side of that. We might have a totally different conception of her, and maybe she has no influence on those at all.
Because it's interesting that you said maturity, because
Hmm.
Sylvia Plath, being 30 years old, she's in our society, in our culture, in our modern day, she's seen as very young, like
Hmm.
very young, very tortured, you know, to sort of, and, almost a bit juvenile in the way that she would ruminate on herself, ruminate on the things that sort of pained her. But in another way, Sylvia Plath was married with two children.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
she's also the housewife.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
with she's also the sort of rejected housewife. And,
Right.
a lot of our more feminist analysts have sort of positioned Sylvia Plath as a woman caught between men, caught between her father, then
Hmm.
caught
Yes.
between her
Right.
husband.
Right. Right.
She's sort of, so Sylvia Plath has this ability to sort of be, she's almost able to be an idea of a sort of adolescence that was available for mid-century women. You
mm,
know, the
mm,
adolescence of growing up, teenager, going to college, getting a husband, having a couple kids by 30, two kids
mm-hmm,
by 30, and then
mm-hmm,
killing herself, almost sort of, almost sort of the rage of the suicide is the there's a lot of pertinent emotions there, for women of our day and age and women of a certain inclination, even that might have even been from the emo, days to the
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
mall punk days of the mid
mm-hmm,
2000s of
mm-hmm.
our high school time.
Right, right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, on one hand, you could say at the time perhaps she was, fully developed. Perhaps
Mm,
that kind of, maybe not fully developed, but she had kind of not fully developed is completely wrong. But she had gone through the arc, like you're
mm,
saying, like she had kind of completed a stage. At
right.
that point, she had almost completed, you would think like that, that's like almost your worldly obligations. Like I got married, I got the education, I got the kids, you know,
Right.
the rest of it's for
Especially
me, I don't know,
especially for mid
that's,
20th century. You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
in in a a quarter of the way through the 21st century, we've kind of stretched that time scale out much
Hmm.
more.
Hmm.
Where
Yeah,
but
but
for mid
but
20th century, she's almost exactly on
yeah,
time, or
perhaps,
exactly where they felt like she should be.
yeah, yeah. But maybe on one hand, because we have stretched out adolescence, since
Hmm.
then we've continued to stretch adolescence further and further into life, and then so, maybe we can now identify and see how young she actually was at 29, you know,
Right.
and maybe she's not any more mature or less mature. It's just that maybe we can identify with those, I guess, I don't know,
Sentiments.
less, yeah, yeah, those sentiments, right? Yeah. Um, and we can't even imagine, that married and two kids, because I'm not in that position. I mean, I'm
Right.
that age,
Right.
um,
Exactly.
so, and we are not unique.
Exactly.
And so, um,
So in a way,
it's
Sylvia
yeah.
Plath, she's close to us
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
far away in
Right.
time, far away
Hmm.
in sort of
Hmm.
life position. Yet all of us
Right.
are sort of still creatures of society. We are
Hmm.
still creatures
Hmm.
of our society. And
Hmm.
Sylvia Plath, she has a lot to say about the society. The suburbs is not quite as rigid as it once was, and
Right. Yeah.
but I,
She's a victim of the revolution, the sexual and cultural revolution.
right. I,
Yeah. She. Yeah.
I imagine Sylvia Plath. Like I said, she's like Tim Burton before Tim Burton, and I
Hmm.
always imagine Tim Burton as being the horror of the suburbs, like a suburban
Mm.
horror, like a
Mm.
suburban horror,
Mm.
or a the dark side of the suburbia. So, and Sylvia Plath is, she was almost Tim Burton before Tim Burton.
Mm.
He's almost like he's almost like a priest of Sylvia Plath,
Mm.
of Sylvia Plath in some ways.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Sort of that teenage angst. Well, so what poem did what poem you got this week?
Well, this week I decided to do a poem, probably one of the first poems that by Sylvia Plath that I read. It's definitely one of the first villanelles that ever really spoke to me.
Mm. Mm.
And the poem I chose is "Mad Girl's Love Song."
Yeah. I know you love those villanelles.
Mad Girl's Love Song. It is really probably one of her seminal poems. Would you like me to go first while we're
Yeah.
talking
Yeah. Let's
about it?
do it.
All
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
all
Yeah. Go
right.
for it. Go for it.
Mad Girl's Love Song by Sylvia Plath. The funny thing is, it was actually first published in Mademoiselle magazine.
Mm.
So it was actually published in a magazine.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it kind of, and like, we kind of talked about, Sylvia Plath being kind of young, kind of embodying this like sort of young girl. I mean, sort of that's kind of that's Mademoiselle magazine. Mademoiselle, that's French for like senorita, basically. So a
Mm.
young woman. It's like a young woman
Yeah.
magazine,
Hmm.
and it kind of even lends something to what we spoke about, as far as the emo days to the mall punk days of it's a magazine. It's not a book.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's published in a magazine.
Mhm. Mhm.
So and and then the subject matter of the poem, it almost sort of lends itself to that. The poem is a villanelle, just a little bit about villanelles. It's a prototypical villanelle, 19-line poem, five tercets, one ending quatrain. And the villanelle actually derives from songs, sort of pastoral songs,
Mhm.
but it has come to sort of be like a English standard.
Mhm.
There's two repeating lines that alternate at the end of each subsequent stanza, and the
Mhm.
last stanza includes both repeated lines.
Yep.
So the poem, it's in it's this poem in particular, it's in iambic pentameter. And let me go ahead and bring it up. Actually, that's what I
Yeah.
meant to do. Bring the poem up. And let me share the screen. Mad Girls Love Song, Sylvia Plath. And you know, and the thing about villanelles, like I said, a lot of them are in iambic pentameter. That's mostly the English ones, though. And
Mm. Mm.
but the rhyme, the usual rhyme scheme, and some famous villanelles that people might want to go look up. Do not go gentle into that good night by Dylan Thomas.
Mhm.
That's another super famous one. One Art by Elizabeth Bishop,
Mm.
and of course Mad Girl's Love Song. And this
Mhm.
poem, Mad
Mhm.
Girl's Love Song, even I actually was reading an article about villanelles. Like it seemed like I was researching villanelles, and everybody kept talking about Mad Girl's Love Song.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, it is
Yeah.
indeed
Yeah.
like
There's
a
also I just want to mention there's also one other like classic example of a villanelle that you can actually find on a site called Hello Poetry. I think it's called Hey Bartender. So just
mm,
if you wanted to get on and give that a quick search, I think I can't remember the name of the guy that had written it, but Hey Bartender will get you there.
well,
Um,
hey
but
bartender, maybe you guys need to go check that out.
yeah,
I think that's a good poem. But
right, yeah, yeah. But yeah,
yeah,
back to the Villanelle. I'm just saying classic, classic,
right, classic villanelles.
Villanelle. So,
And Mad Girl's Love Song is definitely one. And
absolutely.
as I sort of get into my analysis, like a little later
Hmm.
on, we'll see why this
Mm,
is like just a classic villanelle.
mm,
Why everybody's, when it comes to villanelles, people talk about it. When it comes to Sylvia Plath, people talk about it. This is one of the poems that is considered one of the greats. And without further ado, I'll give it a read here, and then we'll get into some analysis.
right.
All right. Mad Girl's Love Song by Sylvia Plath. I shut my eyes and all the world drops dead. I lift my lids and all is born again. I think I made you up inside my head. The stars go waltzing out in blue and red, and arbitrary blackness gallops in. I shut my eyes and all the world drops dead. I dreamed that you bewitched me into bed and sung me moonstruck, kissed me quite insane. I think I made you up inside my head. God topples from the sky, hell's fires fade, exit seraphim and Satan's men. I shut my eyes and all the world drops dead. I fancied you'd return the way you said, but I grow old and I forget your name. I think I made you up inside my head. I should have loved a thunderbird instead. At least when spring comes, they roar back again. I shut my eyes and all the world drops dead. I think I made you up inside my head. All right. That was Mad Girl's Love Song by Sylvia Plath. And the title is perfect because it's a
Hmm.
love
Hmm.
song.
Yeah.
It's a love song. Villanelles derive from songs.
Yep.
So this is so it's a song, and doing some research on the villanelle, they were saying that the villanelle is often used to characterize obsession or a
Mm,
certain madness.
mm, mm, mm,
Especially in the English speaking world, villanelles are usually they often can characterize obsession or a certain madness.
mm.
It's obvious it's because of the simple rhyme scheme and the repeated refrains,
Yes.
so it makes perfect sense that this is a mad girl's love song. You know,
Yeah.
the repeated refrains. I think I made you up inside my head. I shut my eyes and all the world drops dead. This gives the poem a ruminating or a manic quality. So so obviously before we even have to do any analysis of the poem itself, just the structure of the poem, it almost bleeds obsession.
Mm, mm.
And one thing about and it's also interesting as far as the villanelle being a poem that characterizes obsession. you know um the interesting thing about the villanelle, if you were to actually break the rhyme scheme down, we have a lot more A rhymes as compared to B rhymes. If you look at the middle lines of the villanelle, I lift my lids and all is born again.
Mhm. Mhm.
An arbitrary blackness gallops in. Sung me moonstruck, kiss me quite insane. Those are slant rhymes on the B lines,
Yep.
but we have such overwhelming A lines. It's almost like the A lines represent the will of the lover, and the B lines represent the object of what is being obsessed over.
Mm.
Because we have so
Interesting.
many A lines compared to B lines, that the lines that the bed, head, fade, dead, said, head,
Mhm.
that's almost like the person obsessing over what is being obsessed over, and the B
Mhm.
lines are
Mhm.
almost they're almost what is being obsessed over, because obsession is structurally one sided.
Mm. Mhm.
The the same way that obsession is structurally one sided, the poem's rhyme scheme is structurally one sided.
Mm.
So that was a bit of a structural analysis, but let's get into the meat of the poem.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, what I love about this poem is the first stanza sort of gives us the realms that the poem will take place in. I shut my eyes and all the world drops dead. I lift my lids and all is born again. I think I made you up inside my head.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
this poem takes place in a realm of the poet closing their eyes and the world sort of dying or dropping dead, and a realm where the poet has their eyes open and everything is born. And when the eyes are shut, it's sort of like the realm of the dead, I guess you could say, and all is born with the lifted lids.
Mhm.
But the
Mhm.
twist is that the waking world is, even though it's described as alive, it does still take place inside the poet's head.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah.
It's almost a commentary that the reality of the poem is inside the poet's head. The
Mhm.
poem's reality is inside the poet's head. This is
Mhm.
the definition of obsession. You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
this is
Mhm.
why it's a mad girl, because um the stanzas that end with "made up inside my head" are describing ephemeral yet earthly things,
Mm.
like like the stanzas that say, "I think I made you up inside my head. I think I made you up inside my head." They're talking about
Mm.
dreaming
Mm.
that she was bewitched into bed,
Yeah.
singing "Moonstruck, Kissed Insane," fancied. She's forgetting. She's growing old and forgetting.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's odd that that the these things are sort of taking place inside of the poet's head. they're sort of earthly, they're like kind of mundane things, especially when contrasted with, the stars waltzing out and God toppling and hell's fires fading.
Yep.
They're mundane things, but they're described in an ephemeral way, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
But that's contrasted with the stanzas that end with "Shut my eyes and all the world drops dead." Those are
Mm-hmm.
dealing with heavenly things like
Mm-hmm.
stars and gods, and
Mm-hmm.
even hell's fires, like sort of spiritually things. But all those things are described very physically, like the
Mm-hmm.
stars are waltzing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
God is toppling, seraphim and the Satan's men are exiting. But and
Yeah.
that's just a strange, like, the things of the spiritual world. When she's dead in the spiritual world, those things are physical.
Mm-hmm.
Yet when she's alive in the material world, that's when things are kind of much more ephemeral. And even though her life is taking place inside of her head.
Mm-hmm.
This is the very definition of madness. When your life is
Mm-hmm.
taking place inside your head,
Mm-hmm.
that's the very definition of madness. So we have the stars, so we have the stars waltzing and God toppling and angels exiting.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
spirit,
Yeah.
so the spiritual things are when the poet is dead and concrete. You know, the ephemeral things, the things that take place inside of her head, are somehow earthly and mundane.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is a great observation. Yeah, I'm reading those too with that it's always out in the world. It's like that external material, with the stars. Um, the world drops dead and, God toppling the sky and, hell's fires. Um, yeah, it's always that external world, and then you come back into the internal sort of world, and it's, I fancied, I dreamed. Um,
Right.
it, yeah, where, it's, that, yeah, that's absolutely in her head. Um, and that first stanza too, just kind of pointing out that it's almost like it is madness, and it's like narcissism as well. And
Mm,
she's almost like her own god, or it's like the world, it's like everything is revolving around her, because she shuts her eyes, the speaker shuts their eyes and the world drops dead. They open them up and all is born again. They're the
mm,
god of their universe, the god of their reality. Um,
right. Right.
and then thinking, I think I made you up inside my head. Um, yeah, it's like that I don't. You're not done yet, so I don't want to say too much more.
No,
Oh,
no,
because I
it's
don't want to
fine.
jump ahead.
Mm,
But I'm just thinking about it with it being, also, a relationship. I read this as, a comment on her relationship with her father as well,
okay.
And so, do you read that as well, or do you?
I I didn't pick up on that in my analysis, but I'm
Oh,
interested to
okay,
hear
okay,
more.
okay, yeah, because that's kind of what because I didn't think about yeah, that kind of opened up something new to me, thinking about her being, that first stanza, with the closing your eyes and opening your eyes, and, sort of creating your own world. But, I sort of read this as, on another level, you could read it as her, sort of speaking to her father, he's
Mm,
the one that she made up in her head. He's the one that's, bringing her to bed. She should have loved a thunderbird instead. Um,
mm,
because at least he comes back again. Or maybe this is her husband. Maybe this is, you know, but it's some kind of, I read it as like, you know, father, husband, maybe some male, sort of authority figure type, that
mm,
you know, that she think, I think I, dreamed you up inside my head. It's sort of this always, realizing that, if this is about her father never quite measures up to her what a father is supposed to be.
Mm,
And then so that's where, reality is not meeting expectations. Um,
that's a good point.
yeah.
And to be honest, that is another angle of madness.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, reality not almost not not being able to sort of accept reality as the way it
Hmm.
is another form of madness. Wanting, you also brought up wanting to be your own god. That is can also
Hmm.
be considered
Hmm.
madness.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, so so she's definitely a mad girl on many levels.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the tercet at the end, I too also saw it as a bit of sort of resolving the contrast, and is because when she says she should have loved one of the heavenly creatures, one of those, it seems like one of those heavenly creatures would have been destroyed in some of the previous stanzas. I should have loved a thunderbird instead, but when she but because the stars waltzed out, arbitrary blackness gallops in, God toppled from the sky, hell,
Hmm.
hell's fires fade. But
Yeah.
maybe there was something about the Thunderbird that died. Maybe there was something about the Thunderbird that she did not love. Something about maybe the Thunderbird should have died, but in the mythology of the Thunderbird, it does sort of always return.
That's all.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. So
so
as I say, yeah. Yeah.
she's basically saying maybe she should have loved something that maybe had a return, had a payoff. You
Right.
know,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
even though the Thunderbird is like roaring back,
Hmm. Hmm.
the poet's eyes are closed. The love is still in the realm of like sort of the made up, the spiritual. Um, she shut her eyes and all the world drops dead, but she still thinks I made you up inside my head. So maybe even the Thunderbird that she should have
Hmm.
loved,
Hmm. Hmm.
that should have returned,
Yeah.
even that may have just been made up in her head.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
even that is her madness.
Hmm.
Even that.
Hmm.
So we almost have a catharsis. We have a catharsis of madness sort of at the end, where
Hmm.
you, you know you know that tension, that dichotomy is like the perfect illustration for something like madness, almost like bipolar disorder or
Hmm.
manic depressive, where you have the two poles,
Hmm. Hmm.
where the poem presents us with this dichotomy. um the ending is sort of an unrequited catharsis because she does not get the Thunderbird, but it's still like a catharsis because we go from loving the mundane world of just being kissed in the bed, and she's sort of ruminating on the mundane world, but the Thunderbird returning, the idea of the Thunderbird returning is the catharsis which makes it a love song. It's an unrequited love song. She does not get the Thunderbird. She doesn't ride off with it, but it's still that
Right.
is still what makes it a love song. The the clashing of her inner and outer worlds. I shut my eyes and all the world drops dead. Maybe even all the world dropping dead was made up inside of her head.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So you know, um, so that's sort of the love song aspect, the
Mm-hmm.
unrequited love.
Hmm.
It's weird,
Hmm.
it's the duality doesn't stop. We have a catharsis at the end, but it's almost like an unrequited catharsis, and that
Mm.
mental
Mm.
that mental tension is still what sort of makes the poet mad. That's still a
Mm. Mm.
madness.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
tension is still a madness. So a perfect
Yeah.
it's a perfect poem with a perfect, almost a perfect title.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it almost like it comes to like it literally comes to a resolution, but not necessarily like a solution. It's almost like
Mm,
she just comes to a point where she has realized that all along it was just all in her head.
right,
And that's the resolution. Um, because I'm wondering, like with the Thunderbird, loving a Thunderbird instead, maybe she should have loved a heavenly creature. Maybe she's realizing that, that reality doesn't match what's in her head. Maybe she's realized it's all been in her head all along, and maybe she should have put her love, on this, spiritual, like mythological creature,
right,
something that was in her head all along, anyways. And because then that would be she'd be in the same boat as she is in now.
right,
Um, because it's interesting too how
man,
it's the Thunderbird in the end. We end on the Thunderbird, the idea of this thing that will come back again, and just with that thought, we shut our eyes once again, and the world drops dead, you know.
right,
And I think I made you up inside my head. Maybe yeah, maybe even that feeling of realizing, oh, it was all in my head all along. Maybe that's the great Thunderbird
right.
that keeps on coming back.
That's interesting. Maybe the Thunderbird that keeps returning is the idea that, maybe she was actually just in love with herself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe she
Yeah.
never, maybe there was, never anyone to love at all.
Right. Yeah. 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 Maybe she. Yeah. She just like. It's like always this realizing that like. Because like think about it. It's like the stars go waltzing out in blue and red, and arbitrary blackness gallops in. I don't know. I shut my eyes and all the world drops dead. I want to read another one. God topples from the sky, hell's fires fade, exit seraphim and Satan's men. Like this is like the world is ending.
Right.
And that sounds like the world is ending. Like that sounds like that's like Revelations. Like this thing, it, this is the end of the world. And what does
Right.
she do? She shuts her eyes and all the world drops dead. Like even when the world's ending, she just does away with it.
Exactly. And the contrast is, I lift my lids and all is born again. So
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
to her, the things that are born again are sort of things that almost any kind of plain things, into bed, singing, kissing, growing old. They're romantic things. There are things that make up our life. But compared to God falling out of the sky and the stars falling,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know,
Well, and this is also again like maybe also with the return, it's almost like day and night, right? Because she always, she shuts her eyes and the world drops dead. Maybe that could even be as simple as just going to sleep, because then there's a lot of references to being in bed, I dream that you bewitched me into bed, like and we talk about dreaming right after we talk about, shutting our eyes.
mm,
Um, and it could be just along with everything else, it could just be as simple as the going to bed, going to bed at
could
night,
be.
each night waking up the next day. Um,
Mm, it could be, man. Could be. And so and I'd like to kind of finish on up with my analysis of the poem by kind of offering a more kind of cosmic analysis of the poem,
okay.
because in the first stanza, the second line, we do have the phrase "born again."
Mm,
So the thing that it's almost like the thing from that phrase, "I lift my lids and all is born again." I almost I almost can't help but like think of it in like the sort of the Christian sense, like being born again, or like
mm-hmm,
the things that she's seeing is almost her salvation, like the
mm-hmm,
things that are
mm-hmm,
that like whenever the line is, "I think I made you up inside my head," that's almost like her salvation when she's with her lover. or
mm,
even, or it's her salvation to even ruminate and think about her lover.
mm,
Whereas other
mm,
lines are sort of, the world sort of destroyed. It's like when the poet is alive, they spend their time, they dream, they fancy, they speak about what should be, and that is another way of them. They're mad. They're mad because it's almost like it's almost like a mania, fixating on something that's not real. But the mania has a quality of like the manic a manic person almost doesn't want you to take them away from their ideations. You know, like a manic person, they have these ideations. They're not real. They're maybe nonsensical, but the manic person, they would choose to sort of remain with their ideations. So like you know the love almost has this savior position, yet this but the savior position is almost something illusory, something that's not quite, that they're not quite able to touch, not quite able to grasp. So that is another madness, being
mm, mm.
sort of being compelled to to chase or to ruminate on something, almost that'll never be,
Mm,
you know.
mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, so the poem, and that's what kind of gives the poem like sort of a neurotic, sort of teenage quality, because I
Mm,
feel like as a teenager, you sort of do ruminate on things that you just sort of look back on and you're like, that was just nonsense. I was just, what was I
right. Yeah.
wasting my time?
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Right.
you look back on it and you almost go, thank God that didn't happen.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I know. And all the time people told you, hey, you're gonna look back on this and laugh, or hey, you're gonna trust me, you're gonna forget about this in 10 years.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But so and it's almost because, and then it's almost like the stanzas where we have things like gods and angels and even the stars, those things almost seem like they're not good enough, you know
Mm, mm-hmm.
or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, like
Mm-hmm.
because because the angels and the demons almost exit, they exit,
Mm.
so and this is just, it's a seminal villanelle. It's a
Yep.
seminal poem.
Yep.
Because not only do the villanelles, it's the perfect form to illustrate obsession. The poet illustrates her obsession in a myriad of ways throughout the poem. It's the madness of fixating on something that isn't real, the madness of choosing your ideations over God's creation. Um, we sort of have a hell, a death, a madness, and um, you know, uh, you know, Sylvia Plath, man. She's also she's a Scorpio.
Mm.
The Scorpion is known for its sort of icy, cold, death, hell. These sorts of
Power
things
hungry.
are, yeah. But that's just a bit of. I mean, it's a seminal poem from a seminal
Mm-hmm.
poet.
Yep.
Great stuff, man.
Bravo. Bravo.
Yes,
Fantastic.
and
That was good. Yeah, no, no, that was good. I saw that. I definitely saw that in a little different light there. So thank you for that, James. Um,
that's what I'm here
yeah,
for.
right. Yeah. Well, I also have a poem.
Okay, I'm gonna get that
If you
up
care
now.
to, and I know you know what it is already because you're pulling it up on the screen here. But I got one. The I mote
Okay.
from Sylvia Plath. Picked up a little, copy of the Colossus and other
Mm,
poems.
okay.
Her only one. Look at that. Yeah,
There she
she,
goes.
there she goes. Look how nice she is. But Sylvia Plath. Yeah, I kind of said it earlier. I've had a lot of experience with. I've known many, you know, followers of Sylvia Plath.
Mm,
And it's made me. It's painted Sylvia Plath to me in a certain light. At one time I did read her, but then I that, I meet so many people that are like, really into her. And it kind of shapes it kind of shapes how you see that person now. And
Mm.
unfortunately, sometimes for better, for worse. Artists, and sometimes even with a band, a bunch of people start liking a certain band, and then you're like, they're not,
Right, right.
what, So, but it's actually been great recently going back and reading a lot of her work and just seeing her in a new context. And also it's always eye-opening because I mean she's just so much. I mean she's great. She is great. And so I was I don't, what else can I say? I was in the wrong. I should have never hated on Sylvia Plath. Not that I really was, but this poem here, the I Mote, comes from this the book, the Colossus, and other poems. And this one, I noticed reading a lot of the poems that she has in here. She loves these six-line stanzas,
Mm.
and um, I don't know if there's a name for the style, but I've just noticed through a lot of her poems, she'll do six-line stanzas sometimes, um, with like six stanzas. This one is five stanzas of all, each six lines. Um, which kind of gives it some nice sort of storytelling symmetry, uh
Okay.
with those five five sections. But let me go ahead and read it here. I'm going to read it from my book. Um so the I Mote. Blameless as daylight, I stood looking at a field of horses, necks bent, manes blown, tails streaming against the green backdrop of sycamores. The sun was striking white chapel pinnacles over the roofs, holding the horses, the clouds, the leaves, steadily rooted through. Sorry, I'm going to start back from the whole up at sun. I'm going to start over. You know what? I had a little misspeak there. I'm just going to start right back from the beginning.
All right.
We're going to run that back. All right, the IMO. Blameless as daylight, I stood looking at a field of horses, necks bent, manes blown, tails streaming against the green backdrop of sycamores. The sun was striking white chapel pinnacles over the roofs, holding the horses, the clouds, the leaves steadily rooted, though they were all flowing away to the left like reeds in a sea when the splinter flew in and stuck my eye, needling it dark. Then I was seeing a melding of shapes in a hot rain, horses warped on the altering green, outlandish as double-humped camels or unicorns, grazing at the margins of a bad monochrome, beasts of oasis, a better time, abrading my lid, the small grain burns, red cinder around which I myself, horses, planets, and spires revolve. Neither tears nor the easing flush of eye baths can unseat the speck. It sticks, and it has stuck a week. I wear the present itch for flesh, blind to what will be and what was. I dream that I am Oedipus. What I want back is what I was before the bed, before the knife, before the brooch pin and the salve fixed me in this parenthesis. Horses fluent in the wind, a place, a time gone out of mind. So I don't know. I love that poem. I love that poem. The last one was great too. Yeah, Mad Girls Love
I
Song.
like this
But
poem. I do like this
yeah.
poem.
Um. So like I said, I mean, you got the five stanzas here. I'm just gonna jump right into it, just because
Okay.
um, this one's a little bit more. I mean, there's rhythm, and here I don't want to say it's not like it's like completely free verse, but it's not as like structurally,
Right,
you know.
right.
There, I'm not going to go in on there's no obvious rhyming pattern.
Hmm.
There's not like a strict meter, um, but nevertheless, um, we start off with like this first stanza, right? Blameless as daylight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just I mean, we're talking about the I mote here. That immediately, I don't know, for you, I go to the Gospels. Why? What is it? I'm gonna paraphrase here, but you know, fixating on the beam in your brother's eye and not focusing on the mote in your own, right?
Right. Or the mote
And
in your brother's eye.
okay, yeah, and not in
Ignoring
the
the
beam in your own, right?
right.
Yeah, yeah. So, the eye mote, that already conjures up those, those images, right? Of sort of
Right.
this self, incriminating or recriminating, sort of, pointing at others, when you point at someone, you have four fingers, pointing back at you,
Right.
that kind of thing. Being a hypocrite too,
Mm.
But here we start blameless as daylight, blameless as daylight, the
Mm.
innocence,
Right.
morning, it, you know, daylight, nighttime, good, bad, night, day, we're in the day here. We're
Mm-hmm.
blameless as daylight. Looking at a field of horses, necks bent, manes blown, tails streaming against the green backdrop of sycamores. These are horses that are running free running free in the wind. Males, their manes blown back. I mean, you can picture it's like a Budweiser commercial. These guys are,
Right.
you know, she's out on, seeing them, run out in the open prairie. But not obviously there's sycamore trees, so we're not on the prairie, um, sun was striking Whitechapel pinnacles over the roofs. Even then, the sun, striking Whitechapel pinnacles. We're kind of keeping with this imagery of, being in the daylight, good. We're kind of getting into, some sort of we're touching on like higher spiritual principles a little bit,
Mm.
uh but the sun striking, because think sun was striking Whitechapel pinnacles over the roofs. This is over top of everything,
Right.
holding the horses, the clouds, the leaves. the, you think of the sun, blameless as daylight. Daylight is blameless, right? But you think of the
Mm.
sun is striking the Whitechapel pinnacles. Yeah, it's
Mm.
holding the horses, the clouds, the leaves. The sun is keeping everything together, right? Like
Right.
it's holding all of these things into place, steadily rooted, though they were. See, all these things, steadily rooted, grounded, though they were all flowing away to the left like reeds in a sea. You think also we're going back to other, uh, you know, parables of Jesus, blowing like reeds, talking about, people being, fickle and not, sort of standing in their sort of beliefs. Um, she's seeing them all sort of, flowing away to the left, exiting stage left, right? As she
Mm.
sees them exiting stage left, blowing away to the left, that's when the splinter flies into her eye, you know? It's after seeing, because she's innocent, she's blameless as daylight. And she's sitting
Right.
there, she's seeing these wild horses running around. Maybe they have something she doesn't have. She sees them exiting
Mm.
stage left, and as they leave, that's when she gets the splinter in her eye, right?
Mm.
The mote in her eye, needling it dark. Then I was seeing a melding of shapes in a hot rain, horses warped on the altering green. This starts to it. It's changing the way she's seeing things. Now. Now she's seeing things differently. Uh, it almost. Maybe this is jealousy.
Mm.
Outlandish as double-humped camels or unicorns. She's seeing horses at one point she saw as maybe, you could say maybe they were majestic, maybe they were beautiful, powerful. They're running, necks bent, manes blown, tails streaming. Now they're outlandish, they're double humped,
Mm.
they're camels, they're unicorns. Now there's something wrong with them. the things
Right.
that she's seen out, grazing, now they're grazing at the margins of a bad monochrome,
Mm.
now a monochrome, what is it, singularity, now she sees them, maybe she can no longer see them uh, completely, she sees them now in this bad monochrome, you know,
Mm.
rather than in full color, right?
Right.
Um, and they're at the margins now.
Right.
You want to throw something in there?
Well, you know what happens on the margins, don't you?
Right.
A lot of
It,
weird,
pe-
a lot of
I was,
weird and odd things
I wanted
happen
to
on the
I wanted to
margins.
say this with the last one when you mentioned, I forgot it. People are strange when you're a stranger. I mean,
Right.
her and Jim Morrison would have had an interesting time. With the Doors just a few years later.
Oh,
Uh,
sure.
um, but here too, beasts of Oasis.
Mm.
Now these are, think beasts of Oasis. Now they're, these things have turned into, monstrosities, monstrosities,
Mm.
beasts of Oasis of what was otherwise a paradise, right?
Right.
A better time.
Mm.
That is what she was seeing. A better time. That is one of the things that she saw. It's
Right.
kind of interesting. Horses warped on the altering green, outlandish as double-humped camels or unicorns, grazing at the margins of a bad monochrome, beasts of Oasis, a better time.
Mm.
Abrading my lid, abrading meaning scraping, right? So this thing, you imagine it scraping her lid, her eyelid here.
Yes.
Abrading my lid, the small grain burns, red cinder around which I myself, horses, planets, inspires, revolve. I was thinking about red cinder, that's like the sun, right? Like this red rock, this hot rock.
Mm.
Well,
Right.
I think she's also describing it's it's the mote in her eye, the small grain that burns, that abrades her lid. That is the red cinder around which herself, horses, planets, inspires, revolve. So
Right.
now this is the center of her universe, this mote, this splinter
Right.
that she has in her eye, that
When
shapes how she sees everything.
when before the sun had was the
Yes.
red hot thing that rooted everything.
And it was the sun that showed her what
Right.
what she saw. The
Mm.
sun was what showed her what she saw, right? She was blameless
Right.
as daylight. The sun was, striking the Whitechapel pinnacles over the roofs. I mean, you can imagine, I would imagine it was probably almost hard to look at, a sun
Right.
striking a Whitechapel pinnacle, I
Right.
mean, it'd be gleaming,
Exactly.
It's like, that Whitechapel pinnacle is probably the second brightest thing in the sky,
Mm.
to the sun. But, now it's this red cinder, right? That everything
Right.
revolves. Neither tears nor the easing flush of eye baths can unseat the speck. Neither tears. It reminds me of William Blake, hungry, weary, I thought best to sulk upon my mother's breast. We seek, material comfort, this while craying, infant sorrow. That's what I'm thinking of with this. Neither tears, what tears aren't going to do anything for you, nor the easing flush of eye baths, or
Mm.
these we can't soothe. There's nothing to soothe this, right? It sticks.
Right.
It sticks, and it has stuck a week. It stuck a week, a perfect 7-day week.
Right.
It might as well have been there for an eternity, right?
Right.
At this point, I wear the present itch for flesh, I have this itch for flesh. I now have itch for flesh. I have the desire for material comfort. Blind to
Mm.
what will be and what was, I dream that I am Oedipus. Oedipus, what he had, the prophecy that was given to him. He Oedipus, who knew not where he came from, who did not know his true origin, who also, though he knew that he was going to kill his father and bed his mother, knowing that he was, you know, basically he was, had this itch for flesh. He was a slave to the worldly material passions, knowing he was doomed to that. He did not know how it was gonna, he did not know what would be, he didn't know that it was his father he was running into. He didn't know that it was his mother that he had won the
Mm,
favor of. He had thought that his birth father had died. He had thought that,
right.
he didn't know until he went and saw the oracle. So, her as well, she's blind to what will be and what was. She
Mm,
yeah, dreaming that, she's Oedipus at this, right? Yeah, this itch, this maybe there's a hole inside. There's something that she's trying to fulfill. Now, because of the spec, right?
right.
It's left her uh, uh, unsatisfied to say the least, right? She has an
Right.
itch. So what I want back is what I was, right? That's
Mm,
she wishes she could go back. What I want back was what I was before the bed, before the knife, before the brooch pin and the salve fixed me in this parenthesis. It's almost like, there's been a loss of innocence, perhaps.
mm,
He
right.
wants to go back to that better time, to that paradise. The paradise was sitting there and looking upon the freedom of the horses. The freedom of the horses made her realize maybe her own restraints, how she was restrained
Right.
with her own worldview, perhaps by
Mm.
her own worldview.
Or even how the mote in her eye is almost restraining her.
Now the eye, the mote in the eye in her eye is now restraining her. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Um, and she wants to go back to that innocence, right? Um,
Mm.
horses fluent in the wind, right? Horses fluent in the wind. Well, I don't know. Do they go with the flow? Are they just living? I don't know.
Right.
Horses fluent in the wind, a place, a time gone out of mind. You know, this is kind of similar to your poem a little bit.
Mm.
I think I made you up inside my head. Here too, the poet, um, this is all in her head. The place, a time gone out of mind. Also, I recall Edgar Allan Poe. It's not the first time I've thought of him reading her, or
Mm-hmm.
even tonight.
Mm.
Um, but a place, a time gone out of mind. I mean, that that moment in which and this could be for anything. I've even thought of this could even be because of saying before the bed. It makes me wonder about in the Oedipus things. She's had the
Mm.
issues with her father, the relationship with her husband. Is there a loss of innocence here? Perhaps um, it
Well,
could be, yeah.
the Bruce pen didn't Oedipus put his eyes out with the Bruce pen from his mother's Bruce pen, brooch pen.
I hate to say I don't know
I
if that's
think
how he
that
did it.
might I
Is that
think
what it
that
is?
may I think so. Like he took it like
Uh, uh,
because they used to wear those brass Bruce pens to
uh-huh,
hold their
uh-huh.
toe up. I think that's what he used to put his eyes out. So you might be onto something with the before the bed. She wants to go back to before.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
Mm, okay, yeah. So yeah, it's a return to innocence motif.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm sure Oedipus was like, I want to just go back to the people who raised me. I don't want to deal with this. This prophecy. You know what I mean? And it's interesting, like how Oedipus ended up blinding himself, but he was the child of prophecy. He was the
Mm-hmm.
child
Mm-hmm.
of foresight. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the brooch pin that he used was the same that was used to pierce his ankles
Okay.
as a child, because when he was born, because the prophecy was that uh, the son of his father would grow up to kill him, he pierced his son's ankles to keep him from crawling and to keep him
Mm,
lame. So that's part of like Oedipus's name is, the swollen feet or ankles, I think.
yeah.
And then yeah, so then that same pin is the one that he used to take his eyes out with.
Mm.
Which, yeah, I mean that adds a whole nother layer. I'm kind of, I don't know what that's a whole nother layer I overlooked. But see, it's like it's interesting too there. Before the bed, before the knife, before the brooch pin and the salve, fix me in this parenthesis. It's like we're seeing something that like did she did she did she did she take her eye out? You know?
Mm.
Did she, did she remove her eye, you know?
It's almost like her eye just it almost was taken out. You know, like even though Oedipus put his own eye out, Oedipus was kind of blameless. Oedipus didn't ask for that tragedy.
Mhm. Mhm.
Just as she didn't ask for her. Oedipus didn't ask for such a radical worldview change,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
neither did she.
Mhm. Mhm.
You
Yeah,
know,
kind of, yeah, sort of earth-shattering.
right? And a little girl get like a sharp splinter or a sharp piece of dust in her eye that could really stick with her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um,
And I think that's what the basically the moral of this poem is that if you go out to a barn to watch horses, I mean you got to wear some protective eyewear, because I mean it's traumatizing. It's
it
traumatic.
can be for sure.
Yeah.
It definitely can be. And I think the horses sort of represent like a freedom of
Uh-huh.
existence.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
A
Yep.
freedom, and that's what she wanted. She wanted a freedom of existence. Yet,
Mm-hmm.
the world kind of put this on her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's how I guess a
Yes.
lot a lot of young women can sort of feel like sex and
Yes.
relationships and
Mm-hmm.
marriage are sort of
Yes.
thrusted on them.
Yes. Right. And that's something that I was thinking where, the horses could even be, perhaps, maybe she's not, out at a barn seeing horses run. Maybe she's at a school and she's seeing young schoolgirls run around,
It could
you know.
be.
Um, you
There's
know, it,
there's something about there's something about horses and the women riding horses as being free, as being sort of maybe connected to nature, innocent. It goes all the way back to like um almost like the like it was it Demeter, the goddess of the hunt, kind of. Was that no? That wasn't Demeter.
um,
No,
Artemis?
Artemis,
Hmm.
yeah, the
Hmm.
goddess of the hunt. Sort of.
Hmm.
Even though I think Artemis had a deer, but still, it's like
Hmm. Hmm.
running wild in the woods with
Hmm.
an
Hmm.
animal. It's like a
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
a
yeah.
feminine sort of archetype.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So horses. There's there's songs and poems about women and horses. Even what's that Jonathan Richman song?
Well, he doesn't see her much since she started riding
Yeah,
horses.
yeah. She doesn't see her much anymore since she started with the
Yeah,
horses.
yeah.
So
Mhm. Da-na-na-na. Yeah, I
so
love that.
Sylvia Plath again. I hate to pigeonhole her, but she is on brand.
Mm,
You know,
mm.
got it. Sylvia Plath even has a little horse girl in the mix.
Yes,
Who
yeah.
knew there'd be a little horse
Right.
girl in the mix?
She's a little horse square. I mean, hey, look, she grew up in Massachusetts,
Okay.
um, in uh, what, in the 20s or in the 30s?
Yeah, he would have been in the
30s,
30s.
40s. I mean, affluent um, girl in the Northeast. I mean,
Yeah, she probably
she
spent
was
some
riding
time.
horses.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
So
but yeah,
hey,
yeah.
Sylvia
But hey,
Plath, man.
that's IMO. I mean, do you have anything you wanna do? You wanna have anything that you wanna say? I don't. I think that's kind of summed it up. I think it's about a loss of innocency and
Right,
a desire, for a return. You know,
right. And
this is her.
how
Yeah.
and I love the illusion of how the burning speck in her eye oriented her
Yes.
similar to how the sun orients the
Yes.
world. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. That was something when I like kind of picked that out for me. I was like, oh shit. Like
Right,
I had to
right,
kind of read that one a couple times because I wasn't, too sure, about it. That stanza there, and then yeah,
right.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah,
Because the sun is a hot ball, like a hot
yes,
thing,
yeah,
like is a hot thing in the sky. Then she had another hot thing in her eye that sort of
yeah.
had her seeing things in another way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She was able to perceive the grotesqueries of life.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, yes, Sylvia Plath. Okay, I don't know, cliche. She doesn't see. She's not as. It's not like shock and awe when we read her. It's not.
Right.
We've seen too much. At this point.
Mm,
But we're a little jaded in some regards.
in some
Uh,
ways.
yeah. I mean, hey, look. When I was a teenager, Odd Future. So I know all about, kids, horrorcore and, angst and, but, she really, there's more of an artistry. There's, she's really, and I mean, it's the allusions to religion, to, the, um, allusions to, Greek mythology, um, you as much as she could be for a teenage girl. I mean, she can't help but sort of she kind of shows off her education. Um,
Right.
as sort of emotional as it is. She's like the poster child for confessional poets. Um, she's well read. You know.
Right. Right. She's always making allusions to mythology and sort of the gospels,
Hmm.
even history.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's poems I've read of hers where she like she'll kind of make allusions to things like the Holocaust or
Mm, mm,
stuff such as that.
mm.
I
Yeah.
think and she also speaking of the gospel, she has a poem Lady Lazarus, which is
Yes.
another very
Right. Of
famous
course.
one. So,
Right. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
and I think in that one she says something about air doctor. She uses
Mm,
certain
mm,
German
hmm. She does.
phrases.
She does. That is correct.
So she,
Yeah.
she's she has a naivete, a juvenile, sort of a juvenileness, but she's also sort of well read.
Hmm.
With a lot of history.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, she, you know, Sylvia Plath, man. She could fit in. She could have fit in the 80s and 90s. She could
Yeah.
have fit
Yeah.
in the 2000s. She
Uh-huh.
could fit
Uh-huh.
into.
Uh-huh.
She's ahead of her time. In a way. In a way, you're getting away from poetry now, but in our corporate world, in our corporate age, everything's almost suburbia. You
Mm,
know.
mm.
You know, uh, we search and search for authentic culture in our sort of day and age.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something that's not just for sale,
Hmm.
just as a product, but
Right.
maybe
Right.
something that we could dare to participate in,
Yeah. 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 She.
to become something other than a consumer. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but that's our day and age. That's our fight.
Yeah.
Sylvia Plath, she, you know, the dark side of suburbia. You know, she was a
Mm-hmm.
housewife, a mother, only 30. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's this push and pull of the. She had this
Mm-hmm.
young girl, this
Mm-hmm.
adolescent push,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
this housewife push, and she's caught. But some say she's caught between her father. Some say
Mm-hmm.
she's caught between her husband, her
Mm-hmm.
kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
the modern woman can relate to her. She's you know, she's a housewife. She's making food for her kids. She's also you know, on the pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. 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 Two kind of final points for me are just that we're talking about her being ahead of her time. Now I'm kind of wondering maybe she's timeless. Maybe she's not just
Mm.
ahead of her time. Maybe she fits in all these times before. Maybe she fits in times previous that I just don't know how the women how people were or how women were how they were feeling at the time. I can only imagine there are other times in history, perhaps
Right,
maybe
right.
if not the 30s, 20s, and turn of the century, but maybe in the 18 something or 17 something. Um,
Maybe,
yeah,
and
yeah,
but there's a lot of there's a lot of even though she's definitely mid 20th century, there's a lot of late 20th into 21st century sort of sentiments expressed by
mhm,
Sylvia
mhm,
Plath.
mhm, mhm,
Um, I almost sort of, I almost, you know, there's almost between, first episode we did Robert Frost, this one we did Sylvia Plath. There's almost like a Michael Jackson and Prince thing going on here. How you know how Michael Jackson was the artist for the 20th century,
mm,
but Prince was really more for the 21st century, a
mm,
DIY, do it
mm,
yourself,
mm, mhm,
multi instrumentalist.
mm, mm,
Whereas Michael Jackson, was a very much an establishment artist.
mhm, mhm.
So Robert Frost, he's very much like the establishment poet. Sylvia Plath is very, she's the mother of the Tumblr. How many Tumblr poets?
Right,
Hello
yeah, exactly,
poetry. I
exactly,
mean,
exactly.
how many? I mean, how many of these
I know,
poetry websites are
I
gonna
know.
have a crow as their
Right,
mascot?
exactly.
8 of
Yeah,
them,
right.
10 of them.
Yeah,
You guys
right.
all
Yeah.
have crows and trees
Mhm.
with no
Mhm.
leaves as your
Mhm. Mhm.
iconography. You
Mhm.
guys gotta
Mhm.
give your mother her flowers,
Right,
and
right.
your mother is Sylvia
Yeah.
Plath.
Yeah.
I
Well,
she
yeah.
I nursed from Sylvia Plath in my as a
Yes,
in
yes.
high school and
Yeah.
as a
Right.
senior for sure. But
Right.
sooner or later, the baby bird got to leave the nest. But
Right. Yeah. But one last thing I want to my last kind of point or like one that I want to like just get out there because I'm thinking about it. I'm wondering about the naivete that we see that maybe maybe I don't want to say immaturity, but there's something, the youthfulness. Maybe in large part that's just due to the relationship with her father. We're always sort of thinking of her as a daughter. And so because we're
mm,
always kind of thinking her as a daughter, it puts her in, kind of in our minds as maybe even as younger, or as,
mm,
as a, more as like yeah, I don't want to say less mature. I don't want to say young, but there's a certain quality there that I think because of her relationship with her father and thinking of her in the terms of being a daughter. So,
right.
um, and that's kind of something that's hitting me as we're talking about it.
There's talking about like sort of a naivete, sort of being kind of described as youth. I'm making it. We've made a. I think I mentioned grunge a little earlier. She's almost
Hmm.
sort of reminds me of a bit of Kurt Cobain. You know,
Mm, mm,
Kurt Cobain was kind of like would sort of ruminate on himself and
mm.
sort of these sorts of things. But but the but Sylvia Plath definitely skews more
Alanis
creepy,
Morissette.
right, for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
But there's just illusions there because Kurt Cobain was seen like as a signpost of youth. He was only like 27 when he died. He's sort
correct.
of seen as like the Gen X, their sort of youthful figure.
Hmm. Hmm.
Sylvia Plath, she never quite reached that prominence, but amongst a certain brand of woman slash feminist poet, she is, you know, she is sort of the patron saint, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
So, so shout out Sylvia
yeah,
Plath. I
dude. I
love
mean,
her. I love her poetry. We
I know
might
we
we
would go.
do we do a part two to Sylvia
Eh,
Plath
we'll
instead.
see. We'll see. Give us some time. I mean, but no. I mean, I'm
Obviously, we'll
thinking we
give it
could
some
keep
time.
on going at this. The whole. I mean,
We've got a lot of ground to cover
I
before we
know.
start
I know.
doubling back.
Right. I know. I know.
But
But
Sylvia Plath, she is one of my favorites. She might have been the first poet that I thought like, well, this might be like my favorite. I might hazard to have a favorite poet.
mm, mm,
Not like, and I'm
I
talking
do
about in high
remember that.
school. You know,
I think. Yeah. Okay. All
maybe high
right.
school, maybe even college, maybe
Maybe
even
in college.
college.
I think I remember. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
But I think in college, I think I would say Edgar Allan Poe was my favorite poet.
Okay. Okay.
But we're almost fractaling out now because we can go Edgar Allan Poe to Sylvia
Yeah.
Plath.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Then we have the Tim Burton to the goth
Yeah. Let's
punk,
knock it off here. Let's knock it off.
but this has been Verse Take.
Yeah.
We could
Yeah.
go on and on.
This is
Trust
yeah.
me.
Right. Right.
Might as well end it here.
No, we're going
Um,
long today, but hey, I think we
she's worth it. Sylvia's worth
right.
it.
I know. That's I mean we could keep going.
We really could. But might as well cut it off here. I think this is good, long enough. We've analyzed the poems. We did what we said we were gonna do.
Yeah. 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 I
So
think yeah. I feel good about it.
I do too.
And hopefully you at home feel good about it. I
Right.
mean,
Most
right.
importantly,
Right. Right.
and if you guys feel so inclined, if there's
Right.
anybody that feels so inclined to get in the comments and suggest
Mm-hmm.
poets that we do,
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
able to
Yeah.
see
That'd be awesome.
that. And
Also, just let us know what you think we're right about, and if you have any ideas about what we're wrong about, I mean, just write them down. Write them down and throw it out.
I do have a Substack, at James Bigby.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I wrote about one of my friends who's sort of like the opposite of Sylvia Plath. Instead of,
Mm.
turning the lens inward on herself, I had a friend who turned the lens outward on the world and sought to destroy the world instead of
Mm.
herself. But, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Could not take the
It's a
boredom of rural South
two-edged sword.
Carolina.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and I have a Substack too, Poetic Justin. Poetic Justin. I'm just on there. I'm reading poems. I'm writing about them, and posting other little things. And I don't know. We'll see what. And like I said last time, it's gonna grow. It's gonna grow, and it'll change. But yeah, find me there. Also on X, Poetic Justin on X. So
James Bigby. James
all
Bigby on
right.
Substack and X.
I'll
Goodbye,
see you next
guys.
time.
See you next time. Sylvia Plath
Peace.
signing off. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.